At the time of Dune Part 2's release, fans were buzzing with excitement over the potential domination they expected the film to have when it came time for award season, as it was certainly one of the greatest achievements not only in science fiction entertainment, but in cinema itself in recent years. However, after this year's list of Oscar nominees was announced, this excitement quickly morphed into exasperation, as the film was notably absent from several major categories. While there are many critics and insiders within the Hollywood bubble that hold such awards in high regard, with the consistent snubbing of genre films, in the eyes of many science fiction fans or even general audiences, it's clear that these award ceremonies have totally undermined any chance at legitimacy. The term Oscar bait exists for a reason, and you can definitely see that play out year after year. This time around, it's Emilia Perez, a Netflix movie that no one has seen, and the ones that did find it to be just downright awful. But it's nominated 13 nominations. Not a new record, but it's tied with The Fellowship of the Ring in nominations and other amazing films, so it's kind of crazy. But Dune Part 2 only has 5 nominations, half of what Dune Part 1 received, and still no Best Director nom for Denis Villeneuve. This has started all the way back since Star Wars, when Annie Hall won Best Picture instead of Star Wars. That's where it began. And you cannot deny how much of an impact A New Hope, that movie, had on cinema. But because it was science fiction and because it was fantasy and because it was this mythology, it was just pushed aside. It wasn't legitimately considered for Best Picture when it has stood the test of time. Does anyone today know about Annie Hall, know about those films? There's just so many films that did win Best Picture that a lot of people just don't remember. Josh Brolin has been very vocal about his feelings when it comes to Denis Villeneuve specifically, because even in Dune Part 1, it had 10 nominations, but Best Director was not one of them. So it was very strange at the time. You have all of these other categories that were nominated for this film, but who's directing all of these departments? It's Denis Villeneuve, and no Best Director nomination. It was insane. But back then, Josh Brolin made his feelings known that he's the one that did all of this. This film has received 10 nominations, and he's the one that ran this whole thing. So he came out again once the nominations were revealed, and only 5 nominations for Dune Part 2 this time, and Best Director not being among them. So this is an article from Variety, and it begins saying that Denis Villeneuve has once again found himself shut out of the Best Director race for helming a Dune movie, which doesn't make sense to cast member Josh Brolin. The Oscars failed to nominate Villeneuve for Dune Part 2 after similarly shutting him out of the Best Director category in 2022 for the first Dune movie, which earned 10 Oscar nominations. And the sequel somewhat underperformed by earning just 5 noms this year. But Josh Brolin is quoted saying in his Instagram, he said, "Just want to say congratulations on the Dune Best Picture nomination to Greg Fraser on cinematography, for Best Visual Effects, for Patrice Vermette on production design, and for sound. Apparently, I'm going to quit acting because Denis Villeneuve didn't get nominated. This is how this thing works. It makes no sense to me. But that's okay. Editor Joe Walker and Denis, you deserve it. It's an amazing film. It was even better than the first one. The people who have gotten accolades surely deserve it. Happy to be a part of it. Congrats, everyone." It's really insane. And it's not like I haven't been vocal about some things that I don't agree with in Denis Villeneuve's interpretation, but you can't deny that it is an amazing film. Even with, as far as a Dune fan's perspective, we have those issues with it. But from a cinematic standpoint, it is an amazing sci-fi film. The sandworm ride sequence alone should have gotten Denis Villeneuve a Best Director nom. That sequence is amazing. It is, I think, the best version of that sequence put to film. It is so well done. It took them months and months to get this sandworm design first, which came in the first movie. They were prepping that. But as far as getting everything designed and organized and ready to film this amazing epic sequence, it took a lot of time, a lot of moving parts, and that scene alone warranted a Best Director nomination, hands down. I don't know why they would ignore it. I thought that the Academy Awards, these film awards, were to celebrate special achievements in film. And I don't feel like it has been that for a very long time. And people like to point to The Return of the King. Like, well, maybe there is another Dune movie down the pipeline. Maybe the people are saving it for Dune Messiah or whatever. I honestly don't think that's the case, because they were saying the same exact thing for this movie, for Dune Part 2. And Dune Part 1 got 10 nominations, but without the Best Director nomination, people still were thinking, oh, well, they'll get it for Dune Part 2 because that's the conclusion to that story. And no, in fact, it underperformed. It just goes to show the extreme bias when it comes to science fiction and fantasy, because Return of the King, that was definitely an exception. But the commonality of how all of these awards bodies operate, that's an exception. It's not the rule. It is very rare, and I just don't think we can expect anything different when it comes to Dune Messiah in the future, because this is just how these things have continually gone. And I think I remember reading that Return of the King is the only fantasy film, once that won Best Picture, the only fantasy film to win was like Shape of Water after that happened. And we've had some incredible science fiction and fantasy films. I mean, they're nominated, but you can definitely sense that it's not a serious contender to win. That's unfortunate. And I feel like it just continues on the disconnect between general audiences and sci-fi and fantasy fans. Feels like the Academy Awards just like drama. That's their one genre that they like. I don't understand how anyone can really look at these award shows and take them seriously when there is such a clear bias against genre films. It's so unfortunate, because that's what these awards shows should be about. It should be celebrating excellence in film across all genres, not just one specific thing. This is another thing I've heard talked about as well, which is when Dune Part 2 released, like the time release window, and they're saying, oh, because it was released in March instead of later in the year, that's why it didn't get attention during award season. And that's the same thing too. Like, we can only have contenders for awards during a certain time window. Only a couple months out of the year are films going to be seriously considered for awards. You just have memories of Goldfish. You're not going to consider what came out the rest of the year. That baffles me too. If that is the reason, if that is a reason why Dune Part 2 isn't being considered, and it may be for Timothée Chalamet, because he got nominated for Best Performance for Male Lead for A Complete Unknown, which just came out in December, and he's a great actor. But man, that nomination should have been for his turn as Paul Atreides. For the catacomb scene alone, for his speech of I am Paul Muad'Dib Atreides, Duke of Arrakis, that whole sequence, that is worthy of an Oscar nomination. Only his Bob Dylan picture, that's what he gets nominated for. So I don't know if that's the case too. If it is, that's also ridiculous, because what are they even doing if they're only considering just the few select films that are released right before the Academy Awards air? And I wonder if that's like an understanding that these big tentpole productions, that it's just known, oh, well, they'll get the nominations for the technical awards, even though Dune Part 2 kind of got snubbed in a few of those areas too. But then, yeah, for the smaller indie productions, those get the other awards or nominations for director and acting and best picture. Even then, those aren't really given their full recognition, because I don't think the Academy Awards even airs the technical awards. I'm pretty sure that was the case last time with Dune Part 1, that I don't think the technical awards were aired. The categories that make films happen, like, is this for cinemaphiles or not? And the other thing too, as far as like campaigning, the fact that people have to campaign for awards instead of just letting their work speak for itself, kind of like the Oscar bait thing. If the film itself and people's performances can't hold on their own, like people have to actually actively campaign for themselves, I think is ridiculous. You shouldn't have to do that. If this is an awards body made up of cinemaphiles, actors shouldn't have to hit the pavement and remind people of what they were doing, of the work that they were just in. You shouldn't be voting if you haven't seen all of these films and if you don't have a true appreciation for cinema and all its genres and the technical feats. But it's so demoralizing when it's so obvious that love for cinema is not what these things are about anymore. I don't know how long it's been that way, but possibly since Star Wars lost Best Picture to Annie Hall, maybe that's it. I do think that Return of the King is just that really rare exception for that award sweep. But personally, yeah, Fellowship of the Ring and Two Towers should have won for Best Picture. It just is what it is. Those are films that have stood the test of time, that are so important and groundbreaking. The achievements in making those films, it's amazing. And it should have been celebrated for all of the things that every department did. They also couldn't have Hans Zimmer's score be nominated. I don't know if y'all are aware of that controversy, but they wouldn't consider Hans Zimmer's soundtrack for Dune Part 2 because it went over a certain percentage of music that was used in Dune Part 1, which is absolutely insane to me. And I think the limit was if it surpassed 20-something% of a previous film's music, then it was disqualified from being considered. What an arbitrary number. First of all, there is plenty of original music in Dune Part 2, but of course they're gonna carry over some themes because it is the second half and conclusion to Dune Part 1. There's gotta be that continuity. That was a shame too, that the Academy didn't reconsider that. And I know Denis Villeneuve mentioned that too, that he was disappointed. The number seems entirely arbitrary and makes absolutely no sense that they wouldn't make an exception for a movie that is the second half of a 2-film adaptation. Of course, there's going to be some crossover in its themes. You're in the same location, the same characters. So if you have a theme that is connected to a certain character, it would make sense to use that in the second film. But at the end of the day, this just proves that once again, there is a huge disconnect between the Academy Awards and other award shows like this and the actual fans and actual general audiences. Most people have, I'm sure, seen Dune Part 2, and I'm sure in comparison, a handful have seen the other nominations for Best Picture. It's just an ever-widening disconnect between fans and audiences and these awards bodies. It's very unfortunate. And there is a clear bias against these films, against the films that the masses have actually seen, but also like for certain genres. Shouldn't y'all be recognizing achievements and excellence, no matter the genre? I used to watch this stuff regularly, like a long time ago. I know it used to be fun when it was a true celebration of film, but it long since has not been that. Ultimately, I recognize that the people who hold these awards in such high esteem are those involved in making these films. But my hope is that they also look to fans and audiences and their reactions as a more faithful gauge of success and appreciation for their hard work. I know Denis Villeneuve recently was told that the Letterboxd community rated Dune Part 2 the highest in 2024, and he really seemed to genuinely appreciate that because he knew that this was a community of people who are true cinephiles, and that meant a lot to him.
The idea that there's a community, the Letterboxd community of film lovers, cinephiles that are sharing film lists and their love and their passion, it brings me hope for the future of cinema. The idea that people are so interested and passionate about movies, to know that there's an appetite for cinema is the best reward for me.
As a fan myself and an enjoyer of these genre films and voicing my appreciation for all of these departments that come together to make such incredible films that just transport us to another world, I hope that they see our appreciation, not just in what we say online, but the box office success. That is audiences showing their support. And clearly there was great support for these films, as well as just this continued conversation. And that's why these films continue to linger, continue to stand the test of time, because we can't stop talking about them and appreciating them. So hopefully that means something for everyone involved in making these films. But I'm curious to know what you think about Dune Part 2 getting largely snubbed for nominations at the Oscars. Do you agree that this is yet another case in a long line of evidence proving Hollywood's general disdain for genre films? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did, and be sure to subscribe for more Dune and other sci-fi and fantasy news and lore. And if you're looking for other ways to show your appreciation, you can check out my Patreon page, where members get access to exclusive content and perks. Thank you all so much for your support, and as always, have a very nerdy day.